So would you join me in welcoming Justin Carney? Justin?
Well, I'm happy to be here today and honored at the opportunity to get to share with you all. As Tom has warned a couple of times, there was a last-minute speaker, so that's me. So I'm going to lean heavily on my notes today. But I thought when he first approached me that, having worked 10 years plus in the developing world with this in mind of sustainable economic development, that I should have something to say. But after listening through yesterday's sessions and today's, I realized that there's very little that I can add of value to here. But what I can do is share from our experience working in Iraq for the last decade. So it was 10 years ago that we did our first economic feasibility study in Iraq. And our objective was to study the value chain and to understand where we could play as an outside business in the agriculture sector. And I had lived there for a year already, so I knew that there were opportunities that existed because I've seen the fertile lands, the abundant water resources, skillful, knowledgeable farmers, and big markets. And I also realized that food security was a major issue in the region and that 95% of the food and feed was brought in from other countries through the borders, bypassing a local opportunity for an in-country value chain from farm to market or farm to table. So that although the farmers had skills and knowledge and resources, they were unable to play on the global market, which was impacting and flooded into their markets. And during the same period of time, we've come to understand and realize where we play as a business, where we can have the most impact, leading to holistic, transformed, economically sustainable communities. And at this year's Ag Summit conference, one of the speakers, his name was Doug Seebeck, he summed it up really nicely. He said that you've heard it said in the old Chinese proverb, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. He wanted to say that this doesn't sum up the poor. He said the poor know how to fish, they don't have access to the pond. And this is something that we've seen in reality in Iraq as well. He said this meaning that you go to these villages and you find these people on their land, surrounded by their assets with their skills and their knowledge, disconnected from the global market, disconnected from this technologies and resources that they need to compete on a global market. So this is what we found in Iraq. And over this same period of time, we've hosted a lot of guests that come to see. Over 10 years, we've had a lot of people come out. We want to see what you're doing in agriculture. We want to come out for 2 weeks and give you time and see what these projects look like, see what your businesses look like. And we've intentionally not done poverty tours. And we've intentionally not done needs-based assessments with these guests who come in to look at Iraq. Instead, what we'll do, we do the exact opposite. I'll set up a meeting with a friend like Dr. Talib Murad, he's an Iraqi man who holds a PhD in agronomy, and he's dedicated the last 40 years of his life to national food security and agriculture development in Iraq. In those meetings, it's quickly realized by our guest, who's an ag expert, that in order to add any value to this conversation, that you have to understudy of a man like Talib Murad for years. So you realize, okay, what's my place? The knowledge exists in this place, but I see the poverty. So we go out to the fields, and I want to show you my next slide that'll maybe answer your first question, which when I said that Iraq had fertile fields. So this is northern Iraq, and beyond these mountains here, maybe not what you're expecting. Oh, I didn't get that slide in there, I guess. But beyond this mountain range is valleys that are fertile with rivers and abundant water resources. So we go out to the fields, we meet the farmers. And in the US, we have a milestone that we celebrate with farmers who have been on their fields, same farm, for 100 years, called Century Farms. In Iraq, we work with farmers who have been on their fields, farmers and tribes and families that have been on their fields for over a millennium. And we're some of the first adopters of agriculture. So we quickly realized, our traveling companion there for 2 weeks, that these farmers know their land really, really well. And they know agriculture really, really well. And they also know about American farming, and they know the resources that this man would have, his planters, his 20-row planters, his 40-row planters, his irrigation systems, his hybrid seeds, inputs that are innovative every year. And they realize that they don't have access to that. So we question, what is our role? If we can't come and spend 2 weeks and transfer knowledge effectively for impact, what is our role? And if you ask a local farmer, some of them, maybe the majority may say, Inshallah, that this is God's will, that it's this way. But then there are others who will say, no, it is God's will that this land, we prosper on this land with prosperity and safety and peace. So we can have we have the option of having a simple answer, which may come from sympathy that, how do we help this farmer? He's skillful, he's knowledgeable. He has abundant assets and resources, but he's unable to compete. We can subsidize or offer aid, or there's a really complicated, messy, dirty, long-term, probably has a ton of risk involved in it, a way that's holistic that leads to transformation. And I think that we need to move away from a sympathetic response that leads to aid and into a response that honors the dignity and skill sets and assets and resources of these individuals and communities. It may sound harsh to say that we need to move away from a sympathetic response, but I think it's pivotal in moving from a perspective of being parental to being partners with these communities. And I've experienced both personally over this decade. I'm a farm kid from an hour south of here. Grew up on a farm, very rural, one-stop-like county. Iraq in 2005 at the age of 21 was my first time overseas, and really the first time to leave that area. So I say that to say that I've been in over my head, way over my head on numerous occasions. I've needed help, and I've received sympathy from our situation. And I've also received partnership, and the two are very different. Sympathy kills passion, it kills vision, and partnership enables that. I've had people say, I see your objectives, I see the purpose, I see the outcome, and I see that you lack access to the resources and all the skill sets that you need to implement change in these areas. Two very different ideas there. And what I'm not saying is that aid is not important or necessary. In some situations, it's absolutely the right answer and the only reasonable, effective thing that we can do in the moment. But long-term, habitual, generational aid is absolutely a problem as well. And this is one of the things that we're facing in Iraq as we've seen ISIS grow and destroy a lot of the economic ecosystems that we worked in, and seen millions of displaced people flood into our area. We ask the question, how do we bridge the gap from aid to sustainability or aid to development? What's the role of a for-profit company in this space? We don't really know the answer to that. So we go back to our principles that our company, Business Impact Networks, was built on, and that is that we can connect the least connected with our networks and technologies and resources and pair them with local assets, local skill sets, local knowledge, and local innovation to implement long-term change. So that's been our approach. And we recognize that there are no easy answers to the economic challenges that a lot of these places around the world have been facing oftentimes for generations. But we do think that history has taught us some valuable lessons and some key principles that we can lean on. And I believe that it begins with a paradigm shift in the way that we look at the poor and least developed places. I'm going to read a couple of these key principles. From deficit-based subsidies to asset-based developments, shifting from handouts to investments, shifting from aid to enterprise, poverty alleviation to mutual wealth creation, from seeing the poor as helpless to honoring them as stewards and innovators. Focus on integrating the poor into networks of productivity and exchange, cultivate respectful, mutual beneficial working relationships between leaders from the developed and developing worlds. From short-term returns to long-term value creation, from transactional events to transformational ecosystems. However, transformational work, economic development doesn't end with a change in philosophy and a change in the way that we view the poor in these developing places. We have to take action, collaborating together, walking through the struggles and the complications and the difficulties and the failures of doing this hard work together. And I don't believe that the book has been written on this yet. If it has, somebody please send me a copy. I'd love to read it. But in the meantime, we seek as a business to connect and to walk with you all and trying to find a different way. And what we can bring to the table is our networks, our technologies, our business practices, and a business mindset to lead to sustainability, not just for ourselves, but for the communities that we work in. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you today.